Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast. This is episode 54. My name is Amari Brown, and I cover the High A Tampa Tarpons for the website. I'll be your host this evening. As always, this edition of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast is sponsored by the good people over at Velocity 5 Wings Bar in Sterling, Virginia. Joining me to deliver the Yankees news this evening is our illustrious panel. First up, we have Mr. Paul Pagnato III. Paul, how's it going?
Doing awesome. Great to be on. And we are recording this on Mother's Day. So I just want to wish my beautiful, wonderful mother a very happy Mother's Day. Love you, Mom.
Awesome. Great to hear. Also, we have joining him is Ricky Keeler. Ricky, what's up?
Doing good, Omari. Happy to be here. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Tommy Romanelli. Tommy, how's it going?
Everything's going really well, and I would also like to wish Paul's mother a happy Mother's Day.
That's great. So listen, it is Sunday, as we've all said. It is Mother's Day. It is a great time, and we wish all the mothers out there that are listening and all the mothers across the Pinstripe Prospects family a happy Mother's Day. But it is Mother's Day, so we had pink bats and another Yankees win on Sunday. And honestly, the Yankees they've just dominated over the last month of calendar baseball. They've only lost 5 times in the last month. They rattled off a stretch where they won 8 in a row, and they won 17 of 18 before dropping consecutive games. I think it's pretty safe to say that the Yankees are one of the teams, if not the top team in baseball. What would you guys say to that about the Yankees being the top team in baseball, Paul?
So I'd say they're behind Houston for me. That rotation is just too good with Verlander, Keuchel. You have Charlie Morton. I don't know how he's doing what he's doing, considering where he was 3 years ago. And then, you have that lineup, Correa, Altuve. It's just, they're so deep. So as much as I love this Yankees team, I think they are an acquisition or two away from being the best team, the team beat in baseball. But right now, I think it's Houston.
Yeah, that's a safe bet too. And honestly, I feel that, just for what you said, I do think that Houston does have the leg up on the Yankees. Tommy, what do you think?
Yeah, on paper, Houston is 100% the team to beat. They're just such a well-rounded and complete team right now. But that being said, the Yankees the last month almost have been the hottest team in baseball. So as far as teams go right now, they are currently the best team. They're the team you don't want to run into and play right now. But if you're talking over 162 game stretch or come October, absolutely Houston, because the Yankees have pieces in the rotation that they're going to need right now with Kahnle and Warren out. They're short in the bullpen. So even with this win streak that they've gone on, and as much as they've been winning, they've had to use the same 3 guys out of the bullpen almost every single day. So on Sunday when they won 6-2, it was almost nice to be able to close out the game with Shreve. That's going to be an issue going down the line if they keep being in these 1-2 run games. But yeah, like Paul said, it's definitely Houston for the long run.
Yeah, I see that too. And even today, on Sunday, we saw with the 6-2 win, we still had to get Aroldis Chapman up to throw. And I think that, that does, even though he didn't come into the game and he didn't ramp it up, those are still pitches that Chapman had to throw. And it just seems like over the last couple of games, even though Chapman is dominant as he's been, a guy that throws that hard, we don't really want to use him on consecutive days like that. So with that said, since we're all kind of in unison of the Yankees not being the number 1 team yet, Ricky, what do you think? What kind of piece do you think we could add to this Yankees Major League roster that would put them ahead and supplant them as number 1 across baseball?
Well, I think the obvious need is you got to look for a starting pitcher. And with Sonny Gray going through his struggles and CC Sabathia's health issues down the road potentially, that could play a factor. But you look across the landscape right now, and unless you're willing to put a big prospect haul together for Michael Fulmer or maybe a Madison Bumgarner, there's not really many elite starters out there. So just to throw an alternative out there, I would maybe look at adding another reliever into this bullpen, because when it comes down to playoff baseball, you need as many relievers as possible. And if Luis Severino, Masahiro, or Tanaka are really the only pitchers that can get you through 6 innings on a given day consistently, then you need guys to throw 2 innings a night, which is what Aaron Boone's been trying to do. So if they can go out there and add maybe a left-handed reliever from another team that doesn't cost as much, or if they go out and add another guy who has closing experience, maybe with Boston, New York separating themselves, you can maybe spell Aroldis Chapman for a couple of days and save him for later in the season. So if starter is a little bit too pricey, depending on how many guys are out there, the lack of guys out there, then bullpen could also be an avenue to go with the depth they have position player-wise.
That's good, Tommy. I saw you with your hand up. What do you have to add?
Yeah, well, my counterpoint to that, though, is where are you going to really add another reliever? Most specifically because eventually Kamely and Warren are going to be back. And when those two are back in the bullpen, then there's really only one spot there that you're going to want like a swing guy, like, kind of like a Domingo Germán or David Hale that's going to be able to give you those multiple innings. So that last spot is going to be pretty important. And the Yankees like to move that spot up and down Scranton periodically throughout the year. So I think that while that might help, it would be hard to fit that in. And they're already rolling with a 3-man bench. So again, that's definitely a little bit more difficult, I think, with roster construction. But like he said, the obvious need there is going to be starting pitching. And the one thing that we can probably count on, though, is Sonny Gray being a lot better than what he is currently. Eventually, hopefully, he figures it out soon. And that alone is going to add a lot of value to their rotation and to the team in general. But they definitely need to get somebody at the back end of that rotation, I think, even if it's somebody, maybe not an ace, but somebody who's going to give you quality innings.
Definitely. Paul, what do you have to add?
So there's a couple names that I'd like to throw out there. So first and foremost, to Tommy's point, I believe Chasen Shreve is unquestionably the guy that needs to be removed. I highly feel that we need to add a left-handed reliever like a Tony Watson type guy. Maybe you could potentially package Madison Bumgarner, Tony Watson in a trade and acquire them. I know Esteban Florio would fit nicely into that package. I'm not trying to get rid of Flo. I love Flo, but the Giants need a center fielder for the future, and unquestionably, I think Florio would flourish there. So that could be a potential type deal. And then another guy I'd like to throw his name in the hat is Seth Maness. I went to East Carolina with Seth, and there is no situation too big for this guy. He wants to be a starter. He asked for his release from the Royals. He granted it, so he's a free agent right now. He's one of those guys that pitched in the World Series a couple years ago when they were playing Boston, and the Cardinals were playing Boston. And it was Boston. And there's no situation too big for him, and he's a ground ball guy. So that's another name that I'd like to see the Yankees take a flyer on, just because I know how effective he can be. And getting back to the previous point of not wanting to trade your chips, this is a year that you go for it. The Yankees are this close. They are a guy, possibly two guys away from winning a World Series. Like it's now or I don't want to say never, but it's now or possibly next year. But this is a talented group.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you guys brought that up, because there's going to be a lot of trade speculation, especially, with everyone just constantly saying that the Yankees need to add an arm. I want to get you guys' take. Now, it's going to be off the top of your head. What would a package for an ace look like? Because every Yankees fan and, every Yankees supporter, we can't just get any guy in here. We're the Yankees, so they have to get an ace. What would a package for Madison Bumgarner look like? Ricky, where would you start? Let's kind of let's blueprint. Let's get in the mind of Brian Cashman or Brian Sabian, and let's see how we can make this work.
Well, I think if you're Brian Sabian, you have to try any way you can to get a top pitching prospect in any of these deals if you deal a Bumgarner, because unless the Giants go out there and draft a college pitcher in the top 5 of this year's draft, and they have the number 2 pick, so they could, if they don't get Casey Mize, maybe they go get a Brady Singer from Florida. If they believe that he's the next guy with Baedo and the pitchers they have there, maybe ace isn't too far on their agenda. but you still have to replace the caliber of Bumgarner. So you'd have to start with one of the Yankees' top pitching prospects. Sheffield, maybe not, but somewhere along those 2, 3, 4 lines, you're going to have to go into their crop of pitching and deal from there. I like Paul's idea with potentially an Esteban Florial out there in San Francisco with the Triple Valley, and he could be really good out there in center field. But it all depends. I think that's where the draft is going to be important. If you see Detroit and San Francisco and some of these teams draft pitching, then maybe pitching won't be as high on their list when it comes down to trade deadline time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tommy, what would your package for a frontline starter look like? Where would you begin, and how would you add in, like, what would the fillers be?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to have to start with two of probably the best guys that the Yankees have. I think that you're going to have to see an Albert Abreu or maybe a Acevedo in that to headline that package. Because I agree, if they're going to trade for one of their best starting pitchers, they're going to want to get one or two in return to try to replace that rotation depth down the line. So I think when it comes, kind of like if you're going to trade for a hitter, they probably want a hitter to headline that package. So I would probably start with a guy like Albert Abreu, I would bet would go, or maybe Jonathan Loaiziga. One of those guys who probably going to be close and have the stuff to really pitch at the top of a rotation. Then I think you're going to need a second person, probably from the Yankees' top 10 farm system. I would say probably maybe like a Chance Adams if he can maybe pitch a little bit better, or Thairo Estrada. I think that he's going to be a name that if they do make a trade, I think he's going to be in there no matter what. And then you're probably going to have to put another like lower A guy with some potential in there. It could be, which honestly could be any, but so I would say 4 players total. That starts with, one of our pitchers and one of the maybe like another pitcher or hitter in there.
Okay. I think that all those are solid deals too. And I think that it's definitely you definitely want to get a game changer. You definitely want to instill some confidence in, a best of 5 series. Cause, like Ricky mentioned, after Tanaka and Severino, a lot of these guys really aren't giving you a lot of confidence. Now, Paul mentioned something good, and I think that this has been kind of overlooked. I do think that the Yankees could use another lefty reliever. And we all know towards the trade deadline, the lefty, especially the reliever market is sometimes inflated. Who are some guys around the league that maybe, people aren't talking about right now that we should be paying attention to? Paul, I know you mentioned Seth Maness, but is there anybody else that you had in mind for like a lefty reliever?
So the two guys I mentioned Tony Watson, and the other one is Felipe Rivero or Felipe Vasquez from Pittsburgh, formerly known as Felipe Rivero. I think those are the two guys that you got to hone in on. You're going to have to overpay, and you always have Brad Hand out in San Diego as well. So those are like the 3 biggest names. But I think going back to the trade talk, I truly believe that the Yankees and the Giants match up perfectly, because if you're Brian Sabean and company, you cannot miss on a trade like that. That's how you lose your job. You're trading an ace, World Series hero, and, long story short, you can't miss. So you got to have the 2 highest ceiling players on, I think that's where the conversation starts, and that's Esteban Florial and Justice Sheffield. So if you're including those 2 guys and you're Cashman, you say, throw me in a Tony Watson. If you can pull off a Bumgarner and Tony Watson for Sheffield and Florial and company, I think that's just a win-win for both teams, and I can't see how you wouldn't do it, and you acquire that left-handed reliever as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that you'd be strengthening 2 parts of the team as well. Ricky, is there anyone that we should be keeping an eye on as far as like lefty specialist relievers?
Well, I want to add on to the Watson point first. What Paul said, his contract is actually really good. He's got 2 years left after this year at $6 million, and one of those is a $2.5 million player option. So that contract's going to be really valuable for some of these contending teams. It's probably not likely, but let's play hypothetical and let's say the Mets fall out of it. Maybe a Jerry Blevins type, I think, would make a lot of sense, because he can pitch in the 7th inning, can pitch in the 8th inning. Heck, he can pitch in the 6th inning if he needed him to. I doubt the Yankees and Mets could work something out, but if you buy into all the Jay Bruce rumors from last year, it's possible, probably more possible than in past years. It's going to be tough to find that elite reliever because you don't want to give up too much for an elite reliever. Like Tommy said, they don't really need an elite reliever right now unless these new 2 innings at a time take a toll on Robertson or take a toll on Betances a couple months from now. But that's another hypothetical. So I would look at Watson, I really like, and Blevins, just somebody that on these bad teams that you can get a good return where you're maybe giving up the middle of your system as opposed to the top of your system.
Definitely. And I think that's actually the route that they should probably take because the Yankees are loaded with prospects, up the middle prospects, guys like Kyle Holder, guys like Tyro Estrada, Avitel Avelino that they could probably move. Tommy, is there anybody else that you'd like to throw in your hat of loogie relievers?
Well, to be honest with you, Jerry Blevins was the one that I was thinking right off the bat. So that was a good pickup by you there, Ricky. But I don't know. I can't see them going after a lefty. Now, although actually, and I might sound a little crazy for this, but keep an eye on the American League Central because if let's say hypothetically the Indians fall off, Andrew Miller is on the last year of his contract. So you could possibly get him if they fall off the map a little bit. They're probably going to look to trade him knowing that he's going to hit free agency. So if you want a dark horse, I'm going to throw him out there. But I think that you're better served looking at guys like Patrick Corbin out in Arizona for starting. Guys starters like that, like you guys said, Fulmer, and then also watch for the Twins to fall off because if that happens, there's probably going to be pieces to be dealt there too if there's what they did in the offseason doesn't work. But I would like to add too that I think you guys have shot Yankee fans in the heart about 3 or 4 times now by throwing Florial in deals. That I think that everybody's screaming at us right now to just shut up.
Well, I mean, they can scream all they want, but the reality is that the Yankees do have outfielders right now. They have the corners pretty much locked up, and Clint Frazier is also playing center field right now. So you have to trade from some of your strengths. And right now, we all know that the Yankees' strength is with outfields. Even with all the injuries, the Yankees have been pretty good to sustain those injuries and still get decent production out of the outfield. But it's good that you brought that up. So what if the Yankees really are going to push all their chips to the table and say, let's add a Bryce Harper? And in that case, you do trade Esteban Florio, Paul. We were kind of talking about this earlier. So let's say that Bryce Harper's brought into the fold. How does that change Esteban Florio's projection?
Well, simply put, it comes down to either Aaron Judge or Esteban Florio. And I'm pretty sure you're going to choose Aaron Judge for a whole host of reasons. And, let's not even get into the business of baseball side where he's a marketing machine. But, Giancarlo Stanton is locked in for a while. And then, Aaron Judge is the face of the franchise, in my opinion. And then you go to center, and if you have Bryce play center field, there's nowhere for Flo. And, you could potentially move some guys around and DH Stanton and Judge and, but then you got Sanchez and, his defensive woes. So you kind of want to leave that DH spot open for Sanchez, a little bit, just to see how things go, because, if he's not going to get better in the next year, he's only going to get it worse with age. So that's kind of my opinion. And Bryce, as we were talking offline, you got to, for me, if you're spending $400 million, which is, the experts predict that Bryce will get 400, upwards of 400 million. That's the guy that you need up 3-2 count, bottom of the 9th inning, World Series Game 7. And I don't want Bryce up. That's not going to be my guy. So I wouldn't pay him that much money. I think he'd be a great Yankee. I think he's entertaining. I love Bryce, his hustle. I love the Harper hustle. Especially me being in the DC area, I get a chance to see him a lot and to have protection around him like a Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres. The opportunity there is tempting, but you don't need to lock in a $400 million contract when you don't have to.
That's true. I want to kick it to Ricky because, Ricky, you have some knowledge on the Nationals. Two-part question. Do you think that Bryce would be worth the contract that a lot of people are projecting him to get? And two, do you think that it would make sense for the Yankees to do this?
I think it's a tough ask for the Yankees to do because you look around the league and it's tough to find so many suitors for Bryce Harper out there. You have to look at a lot of the big money teams. We don't even know what the Dodgers might do because the Dodgers, while their payroll will go down, I mean, they're having a really bad year now. Who knows how much they will spend in years to come to sort of counteract that, even though they've got a young farm system in the works as well. It's a tough ask to put that much into one player. I like the player. I think Harper would work with New York if they were able to balance something out. But at the same time, do you really want to risk messing up the chemistry of this team? I'm not saying Harper is not a good chemistry guy. He's a great chemistry guy. I mean, for those, like Paul said, if you don't, my opinion changed on Harper from writing about him for the last few years over at District on Deck about the Nationals. So I think he's a different player if you watch him on a day-to-day basis. The hustle is great. I think the attitude is really team-friendly for him. But at the same time, I don't think the Yankees want to get caught in a bidding war where really their big need in the next year is going to be pitching. I mean, there are going to be plenty of arms out there they can spend some money on, as opposed to putting the $400 million into Bryce Harper or even Manny Machado if it's going to cause a rift between Machado wanting to play short and Didi at short.
Yeah, sure. Tommy, what do you have to add about the Yankees potentially adding Bryce Harper?
Yeah, don't do it. It is such a non-need, and it would just, to me, be overkill. They worked so hard to get this payroll down that it would be so much fun to watch, but there's no need to lock in a $400 million player and even a $300 million player with the lineup that they're posting right now. And, even if they do need another outfielder, you do have Florial, you have Clint Frazier, who could potentially fill those spots. I actually think that they will end up needing an outfielder in, whether it's not this year, but maybe a year or two down the road, because I can't see Stanton being able to play in left field full time, nor do I see Judge being able to do that. So I think that one of those two are going to have to DH consistently down the road. So you're going to need another outfielder. Gardner's getting older. So I would like to see Frazier or Florial fill that spot, but it financially straps you so much when you have players like that locked up, and we're not far removed from the post 2009 Yankees, where for 3-4 years it was painful because we were watching these old players, these guys who were stars in their prime, and that the Yankees just had locked up for way too long, and they weren't doing what they were, and they were a middle of the road team. So I just think that it's time to stay away from that so that they can be consistently contending for years to come.
Definitely. Yeah, I think locking a guy up for, what we, presume is going to be 8 to 10 years, even though Bryce is coming into his, I believe this is his age 26 season. You have to start thinking down the road. And I'm glad that, Paul brought this up, because on the season, it seems like, it's kind of getting to that point where maybe Gary Sanchez is losing, a little bit of his concentration, and some of his struggles have returned behind the plate. So he has 6 pass balls, and, obviously, we could debate on whether he should have more. Personally, I think that he could probably have up to 10 at this point. So, and we've seen early on that the pass balls and, the wild pitches have forced, stressful situations. We saw the game with Luis Severino where we get, with the Yankees, Gary Sanchez, the pass ball, caused him to throw 17 more pitches against Boston. And we also saw that Gary misplaying a ball, caused Chapman to have to face an extra batter. Now, going forward, do you think that we're going to see more Sanchez at DH? Because we've seen that Stan, even though it's a smaller sample size, has better numbers when he plays the field. So what are you seeing from that, Tommy?
No, I think they're going to continue to let Sanchez work out what he needs to work out, because even though it seems a little rocky right now, he is currently going into a season with new coaches and guys who are constantly working on that. He is still young and still, maybe not at the plate, but behind the plate, he's still developing. And the other thing is you can't ignore the absolute cannon that he has behind the plate. So if he's going to go to more transition to more of a DH role, it's going to be another 2 years, 3 years down the road. They're going to let him work through these struggles because if it pays off, it's going to pay off huge. And honestly, it's better that his problems right now are pass balls and things like that, because instead of like him throwing to second base or anywhere else, because those are fixable issues. It's all just mechanical. It's all just instinct. So eventually, I think he's going to end up being fine back there. And again, I think long term, one of Stanton or Judge will end up needing that anyway. So I really can't see them giving him that DH role. And the other part of that is now you got to play Austin Romine on a regular basis. And while he's an excellent backup catcher, he's not an everyday catcher. So now you're taking away from your offense as a whole because he needs to be in the DH spots. So I just don't think it's an issue that they need to address, because I think it would affect the whole team overall a little bit worse than if they just kept him behind the plate.
Okay, that's a fair assessment. Now, Paul, what would you say to somebody thinking that maybe it's time for the Yankees to start possibly platooning Aaron Hicks and Brett Gardner, who's kind of, woken up? He finally got his batting average over, 200. And, before the game against the Red Sox, he only had 4 extra base hits on the season. He got 3 in that game alone. What do you think about people thinking that Austin Romine, catching more and maybe, a platoon in center field with Stanton playing left field a little bit more makes this team stronger? Granted, the team is still playing well, but, there's always ways to improve. What would you think? What would you say about that?
So as far as the catching goes, first and foremost, Gary Sanchez, I agree with Tommy, is he's going to have to figure it out, and he's going to have to get better back there. There's no way around it. He's probably the most critical player on the Yankees to perform defensively, because he handles the pitching staff. He's impacting every single pitch, and with his bat and the potential for his bat, Aaron Judge is number 1, Gary Sanchez is number 2 in Major League Baseball history in, getting to 59 home runs, I believe. And, that's incredible, what Gary's been able to do hitting wise. You need that bat in the lineup, and he's going to have to, just the way the lineup is constructed, he's going to have to play catcher and he's going to have to play defense. And, there's no way to get around that. And as far as your question about Aaron Hicks and Brett Gardner, I like the idea of platooning those two guys depending on matchups. I really see that being an advantage. I think Stanton, should play left more. Judge should play right. And then you have that platoon up the middle and center field.
Gotcha. So listen, it's hard to find anything wrong with a team that's rattled off, 22 wins or 23 wins in the last 28 or 29 games. If one thing has surprised you, I want to say, I think that has surprised me. I want to say that Aaron Boone has been a pleasant surprise in his inaugural season. If there's going to be one knock on the rookie manager, because, he's not going to do everything good, this is his first time doing this, I think that we've seen, multiple instances where Boone has kind of asked his relievers to do, things that they're not really comfortable with. So up to this point, Ricky, how would you rate Aaron Boone's performance?
I give him a B+. I think he's done a really good job so far. There hasn't really been any terrible decisions that he's made over the first 30, 40 games or so. I get why fans are upset that Betances is throwing 2 innings or that Robertson's throwing 2 innings, but at the same time, Boone is trying to get these relievers used to the workload they might have to do come October, where they might be more fresh in that situation compared to other teams, in that they can have their relievers go multiple innings. The one downside I think that's preventing me from giving Boone an A is at some point you've got to lose the battle to win the war. And I think when you look at games where we love it, the Yankees always find a way to win. There are some nights, like you look at Friday night, where the A's have a 7-5 lead. Just have David Hale finish the game. You don't need to see David Robertson again. Give him that extra day off if he needs it. Where not having Tommy Kahnle and Adam Warren right now really hurts his bullpen, because it's really the same 4 guys every night when Severino can't go 7-8 innings. when Tanaka can't go 7-8 innings. And I feel like that can take a toll down the line. But for what Aaron Boone has to work with, you can't say that he hasn't done a great job with the players that he has on his team.
Definitely. I think that's a fair assessment. Paul, what would you add?
I'd give him an A. You were 40 games into the season. He's got the team in first place. Communication has been great. Handled the media absolutely fantastic. Couldn't have done a better job of that. A lot of question marks coming in the year. Obviously, the bullpen usage is going to be the number one area where the managers are susceptible to criticism. And it was Joe Girardi before Boone, and you can go down to Dusty Baker, et cetera. That's where managers kind of have to really make their money, especially in the American League. I disagree. I think I disagree with Boone using Chapman, Betances and Robertson in the second inning. These guys are multiple-time All-Stars. They're really good at what they do, and you don't tinker with that. You just it's like asking Bryce Harper to play second base. You're just not going to do it. It's a mentality thing for these guys. If it's the postseason, I think it's maybe a little bit different with Robertson, but sure as not Betances. You got to get that guy right first. And then once you get him right, if you ask him to do a little bit more and try to turn him into a Chad Green and things are going well, okay, I get where your head's at and I get the thought process behind that. But this guy hasn't been right for a while, and you're setting him up for failure. And in 3 appearances, he's thrown in 3 appearances where he's thrown 2+ innings. He's given up, I believe, 9 hits, 6 earned runs, something along the lines of that. So you're just setting the guy up for failure, and you need to get that guy right.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. The thing, Larry Rothschild staying on was supposed to kind of alleviate some of the pressure that Boone has felt. Now, do you think that Boone isn't relying on Rothschild that much, or is he just basically going to this because guys are hurt, Tommy?
Well, I think with the bullpen usage and the multiple innings, it definitely helps his decision-making with, do I go another inning or not, with how short the bullpen is right now with Kingley and Warnow. But I really think that that's an analytical thing. I think that they think from the front office to Boone that when you leave that guy in who just threw a scoreless first inning, for the second inning, there's less of a chance for something to go wrong than if you bring in a whole new guy who needs to get into a rhythm and everything like that. So I think it's them playing a numbers game. However, I don't quite agree with it at the moment. I just think that it's too early in the season to be asking them to put that much stress on their arms, to be pitching that many innings. And it would be okay if you're asking them to get those innings and then not turning around for the next 2-3 days and asking them to pitch again, which is what's happening. And I think that that's been the biggest factor of it. So if Robertson pitches 2 innings and then doesn't have to pitch tomorrow, then that is totally fine. I'm sure that his arm would be able to rebound a little bit better and do it and be more effective that way. But with the way that they've been used, where it's literally every single day you see these guys warming up, you can't do that. So I think that it's probably just one of those analytical things that's going wrong. But I would like to see them do it less.
At this moment, we just want to invite you guys to please head over to pinstripeprospects.com. We have a lot of content on all of your favorite Yankees prospects. Follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Also, check out our YouTube where we have 4K video of all of the prospects that you need to learn about. Follow us on Instagram, too, at Pinstripe Prospects. And we are available to you, obviously, at the Apple podcast, and give us a 5-star rating. Now we're going to work into some of the batting and some of the hitters over the affiliates. And we want to highlight some guys. Just really briefly, AAA, Scranton Rail Riders, they are 5th in the International League North right now, and they are ranked the top 6 in the International League in average, slugging, and OPS. AA Trenton is currently 2nd in the Eastern League North. they struggled from a hitting standpoint, and they are ranked last in average slugging and OPS. High A Tampa is currently second in the Florida State League North, and low A Charleston is fourth in the South Atlantic League Southern. So we just want to transition a little bit to some of the organizational players, the hitters that are doing really good. And I know, Paul, that you've been really impressed, as I'm sure as everyone is, with Gleyber Torres's transition to the major leagues. What do you want to highlight with Gleyber? What do you like so far that you've seen from him?
Just how smart this kid really is. He's watching the game instead of chewing sunflower seeds or doing whatever, talking with guys. He's watching the at-bats and learning how the pitcher is attacking guys. So when it's his turn to come up, he delivers, and he has been delivering. He's hitting over 300. He's hit a couple walk-offs, or a walk-off. This kid is the real deal. I always compared him to Robinson Cano. I still see him, maybe some people can see that now. I truly believe that this guy's going to hit for power. And I truly believe that he's going to be great in the field, and he's going to be a superstar in this league for years and years to come. He's just so intelligent, so smart, and to watch this guy's baseball acumen play out in games at such a young age, it's just truly, truly special.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we've all been impressed, and we were talking about this during our prep segment, that Gleyber's he's played less than 80 games above single A. So I mean, what he's done has been truly impressive. Tommy, what has impressed you the most?
Well, the thing about Gleyber that's impressed me the most so far is honestly just the major league at bats that he is putting on. And it's obviously we knew that this would be what he would be, but maybe not so early on, because you said it, Omari. He's had less than 80 games above the single A level. And I was just thinking about this the other day, where he was only up in Trenton for like a month. He was only up with Grant Wilkes-Barre for about a month. And I expected him to struggle when he came up, because he's facing a higher quality of pitcher than he ever has before. But he's made it look like he belongs. He's made it look like he hasn't, he hasn't skipped a beat at all. So I've been extremely impressed just with that. I mean, I've seen him get thrown some nasty breaking pitches in high leverage situations late in the game where the Yankees are trying to come back. And he's laying off. He's drawing his walks, and he's keeping the rally going. And most importantly, he's helping build the bridge to the top of the order when he comes in those parts of the game. So it's just been, the maturity on him has just been outstanding.
Definitely. What part of Gleyber's game has impressed you the most, Ricky?
I would actually agree with Tommy. I think his plate discipline is really impressive. You look at what happened this week against Boston on Wednesday. It was the 8th inning, where in that situation, a young hitter could be looking to make that quote-unquote Yankee moment, and he just finds a way to draw a walk and get on base. And that's the most important thing. If I want to go somewhere different, defensively, he makes great plays at second base. He's been doing that ever since he's been called up. And that right side of the infield, which was somewhat of a question mark, because even Neil Walker has not done a bad job defensively at first base. I mean, he's filled his zone very well, so that right side isn't as big of a question mark. But the range that Torres has sets up a good double play combination with him and Didi for the next few years.
Yeah, I would agree too. I think that Torres' hands and his glove work around the base, because he's applied some phenomenal tags. Like I've seen one play in against Anaheim, or I guess the Angels, where he took a ball that was probably going to center field and brings it down and swipes the runner in one motion. So I think that his hands around second base I think it was under-advertised, and I think that he's just really been impressing. Now, I want to kick it back to Tommy, because right now, Clint Frazier's on fire in Scranton. I think that he's been the topic of discussion lately, especially with Gardner and Hicks kind of struggling to kind of find it right now. Tommy, what have you seen out of Clint Frazier right now so far? And, what changes has he made to his swing, too? Because that was a big topic during the offseason as well. What have you noticed?
Yeah, well, Clint picked right up where he left off from spring training, and I know he didn't get in any games really, just the first few, but I actually wrote a column early on once I saw him, and the mechanical differences in his swing were noticeable. One thing that I always saw from him when he came up last year for his major league debut, and even in Scranton, was when he hits, his back foot comes off of the ground, and because of that, he was lunging at the ball a lot, and he was relying on that legendary bat speed to pick him up because he was so off balance. And he was also having a hard time pulling the ball because of it. A lot of his hits were going to right center, and it just mechanically it didn't look right. And you can tell from day one that he was keeping that back foot planted, which allowed him to stay balanced. He was getting to fastballs a lot better. And a guy with legendary bat speed shouldn't have a hard time with fastballs, but he did. So now he's coming at those pitches and he's just absolutely destroying them. He's hitting 362 in Scranton right now. He put another home run out today, and he's just been absolutely on fire. Actually, funny enough, the only part he's really struggled in since he's been up is against lefties. I believe he's hitting about 220, 222, something around that. But other than that, his bat is just been exploding into the player that everybody touted him to be when he was traded. It's so easy to forget with Glaber and Justice Sheffield and how well they've been doing, that he was the main piece that came over in that Andrew Miller trade, and now he's finally starting to show why the Yankees acquired him. And personally, I think that he needs to be up in the majors sooner rather than later. You had mentioned possibly platooning Gardner and Hicks. I actually started to agree with that myself, although I don't think that it should be more Stanton in left. I think they should call Clint Frazier up and let him do it.
That's pretty interesting. Now, Ricky, I want to get your take, because the Yankees have, they've toyed with playing Frazier in center field. Well, the first time that they've done this since he's come over from the Cleveland organization, and he's also leading off. So I want your opinion. Where do you see Clint Frazier? What's the future for Clint Frazier in the Yankees organization, according to you?
I think the leadoff spot makes sense for him. It is a small sample size, but you look right now, in the first inning of games, he's 5 for 9 with a couple of doubles and triple. Yes, that's only 9 at-bats, but he's really a good spark plug if those numbers won't continue the same way, but somewhat similar. And let's say there is an injury to Brett Gardner, you could call up Clint Frazier, and you could put him in the leadoff spot and not mess with the role that Judges or Sanchez is and move them in different spots around the order. So I think that's a good fill-in spot for him. So I kind of like what the Yankees are doing there, whether if it's not Tyler Wade leading off in Scranton, it's Frazier. So it's a good way to give him a different mindset at the plate and to help his development. Like Tommy said, he's got the back-to-back 3-hit games going. If he's more comfortable in center field, that's an option. And I think outfield versatility is going to be big, especially going forward with this Yankee team with Judge and with Stanton. You got to find a way to get everybody into the game as possible. So the more outfield positions you can play, the better.
I'd agree too. Now, Paul, I always wanted to get your take because you have a scouting background. Clint Frazier, what do you realistically see his potential being now with these new adjustments to his swing?
Definitely has a high ceiling. Bat speed is there, and it's just really the pitch recognition that looks like he's found it. And obviously, he's not facing Clayton Kershaw, he's not facing Corey Kluber, he's not facing Chris Sale in AAA, but he's posting great numbers. I haven't had a chance to get to see him since spring training, unfortunately, but the mechanical adjustments that he's made, his swing was actually long, even with the bat, the quick bat speed. So he worked in the off season to reduce his leg kick and separating his hands. He starts with his hands now on his back shoulder, comes up, and then had to have like a natural separation here, instead of going back and then having that leg kick and having all that extra movement. If you break down his swing, it's gotten so much more short, compact, and I believe he's going to impact the ball at a greater velocity, have that, exit velos now a huge stat. I believe his exit velos are already paying dividends as a result of his bat speed and how quick he's getting his hands through the zone.
Definitely. Okay, so from one guy that made, adjustments to his swing in the offseason to another guy that's made adjustments to his swing, and now he's making adjustments to his eyewear. Brandon Drury has been on pretty much an extended rehab stint in 16 games between AA and AAA. He's slashing 320, 444, and 480. So he's been doing pretty well, but he's still experiencing the migraines, and there's no timetable for that. Now, what do we see his role being going forward? I know that we've discussed this in previous weeks, but now, you can't really, we're not going to DFA or move Neil Walker because Neil Walker is the rally monkey at this point. I think that whenever the Yankees are down and Neil Walker comes up, I think that Neil Walker is going to do something good. So, Tommy, what do you think Brandon Drury's future is right now?
It remains to be seen. Andujar is starting to pick it back up offensively, so that's going to make that decision even harder. I personally think that the best fit for Drury on the team right now is going to have him call up and fill a Ben Zobrist type role where they move him around and get guys days off and things like that, have him play for a little bit more first base. I know Neil Walker is making that decision a little bit harder now. He's picked it up with the bat, but I think that's the only place that logically he fits right now unless you send Andujar down. Otherwise, I mean, I really don't know what else they do with them unless because Greg Bird's coming back soon, and I think that the Yankees have to call Drury back up this week. I think that his clock is ticking, and they have no choice. So we're gonna find, excuse me, we're gonna find that answer out very soon. But personally, I think that that's what they should do. However, he hasn't played anything more than third base in AAA, so that'll tell you everything that they need to know, or anybody needs to know about how the Yankees view him, and that's as a third baseman only. If they were planning to use him in that role, they'd be moving around the diamond. So that makes me feel like maybe Andujar is coming down to Scranton once Drury is ready to come back up.
Okay, that's interesting that you say that because I feel like the Yankees are an organization that are always trying to send the right message. Ricky, do you think that Andujar being demoted for no reason other than Brandon Drury just being healthy, do you think that what type of message do you think that sends to the rest of the team?
I don't think that's a good message. I think you have to reward the guys who are playing well right now. From what I can tell, Drury does have a couple of options. So if that's the case, then the Yankees could maybe give him some more time AAA because things could always work out. In the long run, Neil Walker has had an injury history with the back. So if that ends up acting up, you could find a way to get Drury some at-bats there, even though Tyler Austin's done a good job with Walker at first base. It would be tough to send a guy down that's playing really well. It'll be up, if that were to happen, then it's up to Andujar to sort of not take it the wrong way and just continue his development as an everyday player. In the end, it helps him continue to play. But at the same time, you don't want to mess with the chemistry that's going on right now. So this is a tough decision Brian Cashman might have to make. But if there are options, he's got to try to find the best way to take advantage of it and help keep the roster flexible.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you touched on chemistry because that was one of the main reasons that Aaron Boone was brought in because they wanted to help the chemistry and just the aura around the team. Now, Paul, going forward now, the Yankees have a couple of, good decisions, I guess, for most teams it will be a good decision. You have two third basemen 25 years old or under. And I want your opinion, then I'll go with the rest of the panel. Who has more upside going forward? 25-year-old Brandon Drury that's made some changes to his swings, or Miguel Andujar that seems to hit nothing but rockets all over the field and has a perfect swing for Yankee Stadium. So who do you think has more potential and star power going forward?
Miguel Andujar. Brandon Drury is a guy that I see how there's potential there. And, the guy, say what you will about him, he has been not right and not well and not 100% pretty much his entire career. And he's been hitting 270, playing pretty good defense. So it's scary to think about what he can do if he can be healthy. But Andujar, the guy just came up through the system, really worked hard on his defense. You can just see his work ethic and how much it's paid off, how he can learn, how he can make adjustments. And that bat, man, he can hit. I think he's a 30 home run bat. And I think that's a guy I'd roll the dice with, and I would not sign Machado even if Machado said, "Hey, I'll come to you guys for $100 million and play third base for you." I'd stay away from it. I'd stick with Miggy, and call me crazy, but I really like this kid, and it'll be really very very interesting to see what happens when Drury comes back, because the analytics guys love Drury, Cashman likes Drury, and I believe he's going to play. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Gotcha. And I'm going to swing the same question to you, Tommy, because you've actually had the pleasure to see both of them play. Now, what do you think is two-part question? What do you think is Andujar's upside, and do you think that he has more star power and potential than Drury? And what would you do with this situation going forward?
I think it's tough to say, really, only because I think that they're two completely different players. I think that Drury is way more mechanically sound with his swing than Andujar is, at least right now. I think that Drury has a higher average potential, but I think that Andujar has a higher home run potential and power potential. I really, really like Andujar's pitch selection. I think that that's something that's been improving, and the more that he does improve on that, the better that he will be. So I think that Drury is probably going to end up being a better all-around hitter, because I can see just by watching him why the Yankees love him, because his swing is just one of those swings that is just cookie cutter. Like, that's exactly what you want it. It's on plane with the ball every single time. Whereas Andujar has that violent swing, so sometimes that could get you in a little bit of a trouble. I think that he's going to be more of a streaky hitter, and Drury can be a little bit more of a consistent hitter. So I think they both have their pros and cons. So it just depends. Now, considering that whoever it is probably going to be hitting 6th, 7th on this team, no matter what their ceiling is at this point, Drury might actually end up being the better fit. Number one, because he brings a little bit more defensively than Andujar has, although he's been playing very well defensively. But you're going to want a guy who's going to be on base a little bit more consistently. So I think for the Yankees, Drury might be a little bit better fit long term, but I think that Andujar has a higher ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it actually does make sense. And I'm going to finish up with Ricky. Who do you think is left after the trade deadline, Drury or Andujar?
After the trade deadlines, I would think it would have to be Drury if we're going off of those two guys, just because the Yankees, I think, like him a lot. You heard Brian Cashman talk about it in the offseason. So if they like a guy that much, and we saw the patience they showed with Aaron Hicks, a guy who they liked when they traded him, if they're going to be willing to give that guy an opportunity. So they're going to give Braden Drury every chance to prove why they made that trade with the Diamondbacks to acquire him. They know Andujar can contribute down the road and be that impact player. We've been seeing it for the last few weeks. It's just, I think, about the Yankees organization knows this guy can play, knows the potential he has, knows the good defense in addition to the power hitting that he has. If this new tinted glasses can help him out, and DJ, I believe the Times leader had this, that he's been using those at night to help, and hit a grand slam earlier this week. Will that impact him down the road? We'll see. But if the vision gets better, then it's hard to not see what he can bring to the lineup. And it's not a slight on Andujar at all, but it's a different dimension to an already strong team.
Yeah, and that's for certain. And the good and bad thing to have, of having such a strong organization, that you're going to run into problems like this. And then, I just want to transition into another guy that probably doesn't get as much publicity, Abiatal Avelino. Now, if you just look at the box score, it just seems like this guy's a solid hitter, and all he does is just rake. In 26 games at AAA, he slashed 286, 337, and 377. Because of the numbers, he's been, pushed down to Trenton, and the buck just seems to continue. In 10 games, he's hitting 405 and slugging 595. Now, Tommy, I know that you've had a chance to get some eyes on him, and Paul, you too. What could you tell us a little bit more about Avelino? Because it doesn't look like he's going to be in the Yankees' plans. Does he have any prospect value? Like, what could he possibly bring in a trade?
Yeah, I think he definitely brings some value, and he's another guy. He's probably below Tyro Estrada on the deep depth chart that they have in the middle of the diamond. But what I like about Avellino is he just constantly grinds out at bats, and what I've seen is a lot of his big hits have come after he's seen multiple pitches, and he's been able to wear that pitcher down until he gets that pitch that he can drive, and he's been taking advantage of it, and that's really where he's been shining this year. But he's just a victim of the system at this point. I think he has a lot of value, and I think that a team would love to acquire him. But to kind of put it in terms of what we were talking before, like what would it take to acquire, a top of the line rotation starter, and what would a trade look like? I think that he would not be like one of those main pieces in a trade. I think that he'd probably be one of those throw in like the third or fourth guy. But there's potential. I don't think he'll ever be an all-star at the major league level, but he could definitely be a serviceable infielder for a team.
Okay. Now, Paul, you have your eyes and ears to the ground. What could you add about Avellino?
I think Tommy, kind of hit it on the nose right there. I really believe that he would be that fourth piece in a trade. He's not going to be the guy. He's got average prospect value, especially in a deep loaded Yankee system. I believe people would prefer them, like Tommy said, over Tyro Estrada over Avellino. I like Avellino a lot. I mean, he's a solid kid, and he does just grind out at bats, and you just love watching that. And he's just very, very impressive. He's just grinded through and worked very, very hard, and that's why he's producing. So I hope he gets traded, because I hope he gets a shot. I don't think I'd probably say 99.9% is never going to put on pinstripes, and if he stays in this system. And I would love to see him get a shot at the major leagues, because I think he can be serviceable. He can be that fourth guy off the bench that plays decent defense and can hit.
Okay. All right, that's good. If we're going, we're just gonna hunt through the box scores. A guy that's really been tearing it up, and I think that we should give a little praise to is Chris Hess down at low A. So in 31 games, he's been on fire. He's slashing 329, 424, and slugging 524. I feel like we could swing this to Ricky. What do we need to know about Hess? He's a 23-year-old kid. He's off to a strong start. Now, do you think that he has any legit, prospect value, or is he just, beating up on younger competition? What could you tell us about Chris Hess, Ricky?
Well, I find it interesting that last year he did not hit a home run in his first professional season, and he's already got 5 now. In his senior season at Rhode Island, he only hit 8. So the fact that his power is emerging, I think, is a really good sign. He hit 17 total home runs while with the Rams in college. But I love his on-base percentage. Right now, 418, second in the entire South Atlantic League. So even at age 23, I think it's still a good number. And I think when you look at their middle of the order, Steven Sensley's a really good power hitter in the number 3 spot. So having Hess behind him helps. He's got a 463 on base, hitting in the cleanup spot, which is mostly behind Sensley. So he's getting good pitches to hit, and he's showing a good recognition of the zone if you go off those numbers. So with those two really anchoring the middle of that order, I don't know if Hess is going to climb up the system really quickly, but it's good to see him putting up consistent production. And the minors, that can get you really far if you keep producing day after day.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. That's good to know, because Chris Hess is definitely opening some eyes down there. Now, Ricky, I know that there was somebody that you also wanted to speak about too. Tell us a little bit more about Dom Thompson-Williams.
You got to give a shout out to Dom Thompson-Williams, 5th round pick last 2016 from South Carolina. Had a great game on Sunday against Hagerstown. 4 for 6, double, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. Keep in mind, he just came off the DL on May 9th, and he had a 3 for 4 game when he came off the disabled list. He did have time at Charleston last season. Numbers weren't really good, about 188 in 23 games, so he's getting more plate appearances in the South Atlantic League, which is a good sign. The Yankees took him pretty high in that 2016 draft. He did have a 5 for 5 game with Staten Island last year. So this is a hitter I think to keep an eye on, because normally when you come off the DL, you don't hit the ball that quickly because of the adjustment period, but he's had a couple of really good games since coming off the disabled list.
Okay, is there any other hitters that you guys feel like we should highlight? Tommy?
Well, I would say with Scranton, I've actually really liked what I've seen from Kyle Higashioka this year. It seems like every single year he has become just a better, smarter hitter, and it's paying off even more this year. His home run numbers are up this year from the last couple of years, and he's just putting on better overall at bats. So I would honestly highlight him just because you can kind of see that he's developing into that complete hitter, and possibly with Romine cemented as DH, he could actually end up bringing back maybe a reliever at the major league level or something. So as his clock ticks, you actually might see him have some pretty good value with how weak the catcher depth around the majors is. So he's definitely named to watch.
Definitely. Paul, do you have anyone to add?
I'll piggyback off of Tommy with Higgy. I prefer Higgy to Romine. Romine's done a great job. Romine's a gamer, but I feel, talk about trade value, obviously there's more of a risk if you go with Higgy and you trade Romine, but I believe the return would be much, much greater. And I believe Higgy is going to be a better hitter, more complete player. And I believe that his defense is, not knocking Romine because he's a better defender than Sanchez, be called spade to spade right now. But I believe in Higgy's defense. And that was a good pick by Tommy because I'm a big Higgy fan.
Good. So as if you guys don't know, Justice Sheffield left his last start after 51 pitches. And Tommy, do you have any more information on that?
No, there's really not much more to it. He had some tightness and they took him out for precautions, but everything seems like he's going to make his next start on time.
Okay. That's good to know. Some rehab assignments here in Tampa. Greg Bird and Billy McKinney, they were assigned to High Tampa to begin rehab assignments. The team has mentioned they thinking that Bird could possibly join anywhere from 10 to 20 days. No official word has been given on McKinney. Tommy Kahnle and Adam Warren, who we mentioned earlier in this episode, are figured to make their return in 2 or 3 weeks. Kahnle threw off the bullpen mound and reported that his velocity felt normal, so that's a good thing because the Yankees are using a lot of the same relievers. So last question before we go out. So with everyone getting healthy and this team firing on all cylinders, what do you think is the realistic projections that we've seen now? They're 22-5 in their last 27. Ricky, once everyone is healthy, what are you expecting to see?
If everybody's healthy, it's tough to expect this team to keep playing at a 28-12 clip, but they fight every night. They battle for all 27 outs, and that's all I can ask from this kind of team. They're going to need guys besides Severino and the occasional Tanaka to step up on the mound, but if you go off the other sport equivalent of the NCAA tournament, it's hard if we're going off a resume with the wins they have over the Angels and the Astros and the Red Sox and the Indians, albeit these teams will look a lot different in October than April. They would be your clear-cut number one seed right now, just the way they're playing. There are some small holes they have to fix, but right now, Stanton's starting to come into his own too. I mean, he had a 4-hit game on Sunday, so if he's starting to hit with that new close stance he's got, that adds another dimension to this lineup that was not there for the first few weeks of the season.
Paul, if everyone is healthy, can you see this team actually getting better?
I can. I absolutely can, and it's amazing. Gary, Sanchez, Giancarlo Stanton. Obviously, Miguel Andujar has been on fire and then struggled as of late. Neil Walker has been struggling. So this team is not complete. It's not a perfect team, but it comes down to pitching. And I don't think the pitching is going to get worse. I only see it getting better.
Tommy, one thing that you want to see that this team improve upon, obviously they've had a tremendous stretch. What is one thing that you still are longing to see this team do?
I want to see the starters go deeper in games, obviously. I think that's really going to be key going down the stretch because if everything continues like the way it's been, I actually kind of foresee the team hitting a wall a bit, because I think that these relievers are going to get gassed. So I would really like to see that. That being said, I actually think the lineup has way more potential than what it's even putting on now, because a lot of these guys aren't hitting. Now, today you saw Aaron Hicks get a big hit. Stanton's really starting to be more consistent at the plate, which is huge. But Gardner, he needs to step it up. But it's been like small streaks from different guys every single week, it seems. Whereas they have yet to actually put it all together 1 through 9. And once that actually starts happening, I think they're gonna go on some stretches where they probably won't need to use those relievers. Whatever the case is, they need to take the pressure off the bullpen, or else that's going to end up being a disaster for about a week or two.
All solid points, guys. What I'm really looking forward to is seeing a healthy Greg Bird, whether it's Miguel Andujar or a vision-corrected Brandon Drury. I want to see this lineup at its full potential, but they've given us a lot of exciting moments, and we're only 40 games into the season. So that's going to be all that we have for this Mother's Day edition. Thank you all for joining us on episode 54 of the Pinstripe Prospects podcast. Be sure to visit the site, as we're uploading and adding information on a daily basis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Velocity Wings in Sterling, Virginia. On behalf of tonight's illustrious panel, our editor and producer, Robert Pinsner, I'm your host, Amari Brown, and we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.